Here we are. Welcome back to my fake podcast, which I'm going to manifest. It's going to turn into a real podcast one day. This is my friend, Heather McKean. She changed my life. Go back to the other episode where we talk about insomnia to learn the story. Thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, so we are going to trigger you. Just kidding. No, I'm scared. No, it'll be fine. No, for real though, we're going to talk about mental health in a way that you might never have heard of, or maybe you have and you did not appreciate it. And we're going to go there because it changed my life. It changed my whole perspective on mental health. I have people in my own life who this has changed radically. And at the same time, I've talked about this whole concept of being empowered with your own mental health with others, and it has not gone well, and it has not been accepted or received, and that's fine. And I release that. That's not in my control. But I want to, before we jump in, actually, and I'm going to mention this at the end too, Heather and her husband Kent run retreats here in Maui, and you have one coming up in April. Is that what you said?
In April, it's called the Maui Mind Spa.
Okay, so can you give like a sentence or two? Like, what is this all about?
It's going to be an immersive, like, come change your brain, rewire lots of stuff all at once.
Release all these memories. Yeah.
All that, really, I really believe people will come out of that retreat just completely changed. And it's here on Maui, and we're going to eat amazing food and do fun things. So it's great. It's really exclusive. There can only be like 10 people.
So sign up now.
Yes. Yeah. I think it'll fill up, but
so
anyway, it's going to be great.
So what is this then? What is this change your mind, change your life, change your mental health? I know that you work with a lot of things when it comes to your mind change method: addiction, weight loss, insomnia, as we've covered. But mental health is such a big one because there's so much stigma. There's this really locked in perspective of what depression is, what anxiety is. But what baffles me is that even medical professionals in the field, they still admit, we don't really know what the brain's doing. The brain is this big black box that they call it. They call that, like, in linguistics, at least, is like this, we don't really know, it's just, it's ambiguous, it's confusing, but here's what we think we know. And then things are always evolving and changing. But one thing that I've always been told through my own experience with depression, anxiety, especially in my early 20s, is that you will always have depression, Hannah. Hannah, you are depressed. We will do some therapies with you. We'll talk about things with you. They prescribed things that I did not take. I chose not to, and I'm really, really glad I did. I made that choice. But it was just like, even if you get better, Hannah, it might come back. Respond.
Oh, I will say that breaks my heart, but it was also my story. So I'm coming from that place too. Yes. I was diagnosed bipolar and manic depressive at 16, and it runs in my family. That's what they say.
Yes.
It's genetic, possibly. It runs in the family. Do your parents have a history of mental illness? Right. These are the questions that they ask. And so that kind of gets into our mind, like, oh, it's genetic. Oh, it can be, we probably have it because they have it. And I thought that too. It was like going in to get it was like being confirmed, like, I'm going to go in and get my official diagnosis. Yes. But I already knew.
Yeah.
And
I had a really similar experience with that as well.
Yes. They took blood, and then I got my diagnosis. So I made the assumption that they could tell that I was depressed in my blood.
Huh.
I know. Come to find out, that's not true, because you'll hear this often. I have a chemical imbalance. Mm-hmm. You do. But not for the reasons you think.
Whoa. Okay, go there.
Okay. So let's talk about what depression is. The feelings of depression, or what we would say clinical depression, comes from, and you can see it now. I love all the brain stuff that we have now. We have imaging, we have scans, we have all kinds of different things that we can see. But we know that we have neurotransmitters, right? These are and hormones that get produced. And so there's neurotransmitters that when they get produced, they have things that don't make us feel great at the time, but see, they're really purposeful. So for instance, norepinephrine is something that, that is produced, or cortisol, right? These are the things that get produced in our body, but they're in response to something that our body has deemed traumatic or potentially dangerous.
Okay.
So they were really, really helpful. They're meant to come in for a short amount of time. We're supposed to take action, respond, and then the body's supposed to, have them come out. But what happens is we get stuck in trauma because we don't process trauma like we should or like we used to. We're not taught those things. We're not even taught emotional intelligence. So how are we going to process trauma? And so what happens is we go into this sort of hypervigilant state, which is all really chemical. So something happens, the amygdala gland kicks in, it starts to produce things that are supposed to get our attention. And what it does is it produces these chemicals that make us sometimes anxious, right? We're like, and we get anxious because we're supposed to be hyper aware of our environment because there's potential danger. If we're hyper aware, we can spot the danger, we can avoid, we can run, or we can fight, or we can freeze and be invisible. And then when it passes, we're done. Those chemicals get passed out of our body. What happens when you get stuck in a trauma response? And that trauma response is learned, but then it's perpetuated over and over. And that can be from something as horrible as sexual abuse or physical abuse or emotional abuse or something or some other horrific thing. But it can also be from maybe feeling like your family doesn't like you or like you're bullied or you're not good enough. That can be really traumatic for a child. And then they're going to start to reaffirm those things through experiences, which are going to further put them in a trauma response. So let's look into the brain at what happens here. We pretty naturally produce feel-good chemicals and hormones, right? Dopamine, serotonin. None of us are broken in that way. We produce in alignment with our thoughts. When we're kids, we think a lot of just happy, wonderful thoughts. We don't learn to start to think critical, worried, anxious thoughts until later on, but guess who we learn those from? So when they say this stuff is passed down, they're not wrong.
Right.
But what's being passed down is these coping skills, these coping mechanisms like, oh, I'm supposed to be anxious about this. And, oh, I guess the response is worry.
I mean, this happens in the womb. We know this, that when mothers are anxious,
right,
the baby is also.
Right.
You know?
And what we do more of, we practice,
yes,
we get better at, right? The more I practice something, the better I get. It's the same with our chemical production in our mind.
Yeah.
So we are depressed because we're doing depression. What is depression? Well, if you take what the actual definition of the word is, it's to push down, suppress, depress, right? To push down upon. So what we're doing is we're putting down the ability for our mind to produce feel-good hormones and chemicals. And then we think thoughts that have to produce not great feeling hormones and chemicals. When you get really good at it and you do it for a long period of time, it becomes the natural thing. The amygdala gland gets more and more sensitive. So even the slightest thing can be triggering and can produce those chemicals in abundance. And what happens is we become very out of practice of producing the feel-good hormones and chemicals. And it all has to do with what we're playing in our mind. So let's say you grew up in a fairly traumatic childhood. I grew up with a lot of physical abuse and addiction, drug, alcohol addiction, sexual abuse. But I became, an adult. I actually left home at 11,
Wow.
But I, came back in with my family. But let's just say that I'm an adult by the time I'm 18 or 21. Those things were no longer happening to me, actually. Now, I was still finding abuse in a lot of different ways because you have to stay in alignment with what you know. It's a funny thing about the brain and the way that we work. But I was no longer being physically abused or sexually abused, I was abusing myself in my mind with my words to stay in alignment with what I thought about myself. But those things weren't happening anymore. But see, in my subconscious mind, they are. They're being replayed and replayed and replayed, and we're not aware of it consciously. Which means then I have to produce something physiologically in accordance to those things. Thoughts become things. And there has to be a chemical response to the thoughts that we're thinking. If we're thinking a lot of really depressing thoughts, even subconsciously or especially subconsciously, and we start to have that, yeah, but all these bad things happen to me. Bad things always happen to me. I'm always rejected. I'm always left out. I'm introverted and I'm afraid of people.
Or even simply, I am depressed.
I am depressed.
Yeah.
You become better and better and better at it.
Yeah.
And what is happening is your brain is legit producing less feel-good hormones.
So you're not discrediting what's happening
No.
in depressed people.
It's very real.
But what you're speaking to is why it's happening.
And who's in control of it.
There you go. So here's the thing is maybe 3-4 years ago, I would see a post on Instagram, I'm happy today because I choose to be happy. Do you know how much that offended me? I was like, F you. Are you kidding me? You
Right.
just choosing to, try telling that to me when I'm, on one of my depressed days, or like back when I was 22 or 21 and, having these awful, awful thoughts about what I wanted to do. Like it was not good.
Right.
You're telling me just choose to be happy, Hannah. That was so offensive to me. Now, that is why I didn't want to make a video like this or my fake podcast before without someone who can fully explain it, because I don't know how to explain it, man. It's just something I believe now and I understand it now. Can you speak to that? Like speak to why it's so offensive to someone.
Well, because this is what happens. We become victimized. Now, in the beginning, when we're little, we have no choice. That everything around us is the people around us are keeping us alive. We usually cannot stay alive without someone investing in us, without someone feeding us, putting, clothes on our back. So those people and their ideas and what they do to us becomes real. We talked about before, remember the prefrontal cortex. When you're little, you can't rationally think through, well, my mom is under the influence of substances right now, and that's just really her problem. And, I'm just going to do me.
Yeah.
When you're little, you don't know that.
No.
In fact, you think mom might be using because there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Or dad might be hitting you because you're bad. Or, whatever. Obviously, these are extreme.
Because of me, yeah.
It's because of me. We're very egocentric as kids because we have to be. And so anything that happens is going to come back to me. You're mad at me, right? Why are you mad at me when kids, like you might be stressed or anxious or thinking about something so different. You interact with your child. Why are you mad at me? And you're like, what? That's what they think.
Yeah.
In their brain, you're mad at them. Right. Now they have to do something with that. Oh, I must have done something wrong. I must have made them,
Yeah.
And that's the way a kid thinks. They cannot think other than that.
So why does this continue into adulthood then?
Such a great question. It's because we learn that and it's stored in our mind, and our memories and the files that are stored within our subconscious mind are who we are. It's how we do us. So if there's something we don't like in there or something we'd like to change that's no longer serving us, we need to change that. When I was a child, I thought like a child. But when I became an adult, I had to let go of those childish things. Now, you would just be like, no, don't think about those things anymore. Unfortunately, no. That'd be like you, remember we talked about being programmed like a Mac, right? That would be like you just saying to your Mac, like, I want you to no longer word process in pages by saying it.
Right.
No, I'm sorry. If you want to word process somehow different, you got to download something different.
Right.
And you have to do that. Now, once you do, great. It's going to have that option.
Yes.
But for a lot of us, we don't have those options because that's the way our childhood was. Now, it doesn't help to blame somebody else, but we've got to take responsibility when we become adults. If we're told as children that we are depressed and we're never going to change by a doctor, a medical authority,
Yeah.
what else do we have to think?
That's really stripping you of all your power.
No, that's incredibly
Yeah.
powerful people that we've given power to tell us about our health.
Yeah.
So when we understand that, yes, I'm doing feelings of depression in alignment with what I'm thinking, then we can start to watch our thought life. We can start to think about what is in there that's producing this. We have to understand there's a very good reason our body's depressing the happy chemicals and overproducing the not good chemicals. When we look at it like that, then we're not like, I'm broken, I'm this, there's something wrong with me. No, you're actually working perfectly. Good you.
Right.
Way to go. What if you want a different outcome? We need to do something different to produce it. Now then you've got the person there who's sitting there wanting to end their own life because of all the different thoughts. And you say, just think happy. No, that's just
Not
another
helpful.
thing that they're going to be like, and see, you don't understand me.
Right.
Okay, now it's not a laughing matter. It's super real.
Absolutely.
I was there too at one point.
Yeah.
So what is the answer? Well, the thing is, let's go back and address how you got into that hypervigilant state anyway. If you're producing a lot of feel not good chemicals, then we need to go in and look at why. Because your body works perfectly. It's amazing. It's for you all the time.
So why don't we, because Heather did write a book called Mind Change, and you have a lot of, scenarios and examples. Why don't we take maybe an example of a person, give them a name, and then break that down from their depression story?
Okay, great. So let's say we've got Susie. And she
Great
grows up.
Fake name.
I know, it's like the fake name. So let's say Susie grows up. I mean, we could go really traumatic and put her in a abusive home and everything. But let's back it up to the fact of maybe she just has parents who are very concerned about finances. Maybe their job situation is fragile, and maybe they came from families that also felt that same way, and they're just trying to do their best every day. But now they've got Susie, and Susie's got 5 brothers and sisters, and things are scarce, and, it's tough. Mm-hmm. So Susie and mom, the way mom deals with this, well, mom's depressed. Mm-hmm. And you start to hear those things, depression. Mom takes pills for depression. Then we start to say, when mom starts to go a little off kilter, dad says to mom, are you taking your pills? So we learn very young, pills help keep us where we need to be. That's one of the first learnings. Mm-hmm. We might also see mom does these real highs and real lows, which are actually, frankly, pretty normal for human life. It's just that we don't know how to process that always. Yeah. So we watch that and we hear words like depression. We hear words like manic depressive or those different things. So this is that little file folder that starts for Susie. So then Susie is going to school. She already sort of gets that her parents are under a lot of pressure, so she tries to be the best Susie she can be. She wants to help, right? So she tries so hard, but she's kind of worried because she sees that when mom and dad are very concerned about the outcome of something, they worry about it a lot. So she thinks, if I worry about this a lot, I might then do a really good job. Hmm. Now, as an adult with your prefrontal cortex mostly formed, that sounds pretty crazy, right? It is not for a child. This is super logical for a child. They can only know what's around them. Yeah. They see these things. And so Susie goes to school and she's got the big test and she worries and she worries and she worries. Now, when we worry, we're thinking thoughts of, they're catastrophic thoughts. So if I don't get my test. That was me. Yes. If I don't do well on my test, then I get an F. And then if I get an F and then I'm failing, what are mom and dad going to think? They're already under so much pressure. And then they're going to think this, and they just want me to go to college and get a good career and, all these different things. Yeah. That's so much pressure for a little brain, mm-hmm. for a little person. So when she worries, the brain goes, okay, what's the high alert status here? What's going on? And norepinephrine shoots up because we have to raise our heart rate, right? And then we have to produce a lot of cortisol because that helps us kind of be on our game, like right now. We have to just produce a lot of stress chemicals and hormones. And then let's say that she actually does get an A on her test. Now she has a learning that, okay, for me to get an A, I have to worry about it. Right. Now, did she have to worry to get the A? Fact of the matter is, Susie's a super bright girl. Yeah. Without trying, she could have got that A. She could have not even studied and got that A. But she's trying to learn these things, and that worked for her. Yeah. And now the brain goes, okay, so when we worry and we stress, we get A's. That's a learning. Okay. She's going to keep testing that learning to make sure it's true for her. So she's going to stress and worry for everything. Maybe she's just a good student, right? Right. So then she applies this method to other things. Maybe to relationships, maybe to other projects, maybe to, how to be around my mom and dad. So maybe every time she goes into a social event or occasion, she worries and worries and she plays it over to make sure it's perfect because she doesn't want to mess up because messing up would be bad. So what we have here is Susie who practices producing a lot of stress hormones. That's really tough on the body. The body's going to respond. So now maybe Susie gets sick. Which, oh my gosh, Susie can't get sick. She's got this test. And what happens if more stress, more worry? Then she goes, we can't be sick. Mm-hmm. And the body goes, okay, we can't be sick. But then there's the hypervigilance of that. Now, sometimes sickness is a way for us to rest. It's not a good way, but the body knows. Listen, if you're going like high alert all the time, the subconscious mind is going, chick, you need to relax. And it's like, you're not going to relax, so let's do sick.
Right.
Take a break. Everyone's okay when you're sick. You're legit can take a break, right? But then maybe for Susie, she freaks out about that. This is Susie. People do it differently. Some people
Susie.
get really sick because, they can only take a break when they're
sure.
sick.
Yeah.
So I'm stressed all the time. I need to take a break. So let me do a chronic illness.
Right.
Okay. It's not as just cut and dry as that, but it can be.
Right.
So then let's say Susie then goes to college, right? And let's say she hasn't done even the depression, diagnosis yet. She goes to college. Now there's so much pressure. Now, rather than pleasing the parents, she's trying to please the professors. And now there's so much riding on her doing well in college because there's this family idea of finances and, you got to work hard and you got to get a good job. Otherwise, you're going to end up like us kind of a thing. So much stress.
Yeah.
So now Susie finds these other stressed people who have these diagnoses of depression. And, mom was depressed too. And, and Auntie, Sarah was depressed. And it becomes more of a real thing. Now someone suggests when she's so stressed and she's feeling like she's having panic attacks, because that's the natural progression of things, someone suggests you should go see the campus nurse. Campus nurse says, takes out her little thing. Do you have a family history of mental illness? Well, yeah, my mom suffers with depression and stuff like that. Oh, have you ever just, thought about talking to someone about these feelings? Have you ever thought of feelings of, ending it all? Which someone who's hypervigilant, they're going to have to, because they can't stay in that state for all eternity.
Yeah.
So those become the things where it's like, well, if I wasn't here, then I wouldn't have to worry about pleasing all these people. And everyone would just miss me, and it would, and that would be the end, and it would be good, and I wouldn't have to feel this way anymore.
Right.
That person's feeling horrible most of the time.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
But we're not meant to end our own lives.
Right.
So, but you've got to see how someone gets to that point. And they legitimately are producing things that make them feel horrible. They have pain, they have confusion, they have panic attacks. They're afraid of everything.
Yeah.
Even the slightest thing causes them to have a panic attack. They feel like they're going to die all the time.
Yeah.
So that's someone who's progressed in their journey. So they go and they see a therapist, and they're doing anxiety attacks all the time. They're doing all these things. And the therapist or the psychiatrist is like, well, this will take the edge off. And they're like, okay, now another authority is saying this is going to take the edge off. And they want the edge to be taken off. Here's the thing. Antidepressants are neurotransmitter. They include neurotransmitters. They're synthetic neurotransmitters. So if the case was just that, you're just born and you're predisposed to depression, you don't produce as many neurotransmitters as Bobby does, So that's what's wrong with you. Maybe it's a genetic thing. Well, I don't agree with that, because we all should be able to produce those things. And all of us do usually when we're children, unless there's something rare thing that we're talking about.
Okay.
So then you go and you get this synthetic neurotransmitter. If it really was just that you're missing out on some neurotransmitters, when you took that pill right away, let's say you get Zoloft, right, or Wellbutrin or whatever, then stands to reason, neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
You should feel better right away.
Yeah.
Do you have history with medication okay.
I've never
I
taken
do.
it.
You do not feel better right away.
Right.
It takes weeks
Right.
to see improvement. Why? If it was just now I've got synthetic neurotransmitters, my neurotransmitters should go up, because that little pill is battling what you're doing naturally all the time. It takes time. And usually there's a placebo effect.
Right.
That's not a bad thing. Placebo effect is the power of our mind.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
exactly.
So that's what's happening. And then anyone out there is going to recognize this whole thing. Well, it stops working. Now I need more. Well, now I need different. Well, now I'm too high. I need something to go low. So I've got...
It's not this easy sort of formula. It's complicated for every person.
No, if it was a matter of I'm missing this and I synthetically need to put it in, it should just balance itself out.
Okay.
That rarely, if ever, works.
Okay.
Why? Because what's so much more powerful is what we're doing in here.
Yeah.
And we can produce feel good. What do you think would happen if your memories and your mind was constantly playing good things, feel good things? Do you really think you'd be able to effectively stay depressed?
Right.
No.
Okay. So I want to reel it in for a second,
Okay.
because I really appreciate your passion, and I am with you 100%. I want to be sensitive to the audience who, because there's a really large conversation happening with mental health, and it's amazing. And I love that people are like getting rid of the stigma of having mental health, problems, and just taking care of yourself mentally.
Yeah.
And then there's this constant debate of medicate or don't medicate, or sometimes medicate or meditate, not as if it's cut and dry like that, but
Right.
it's just a catchy phrase. But I just want to I want to go back to what you were saying when we were talking about insomnia, about the empowerment, because some people do take medication and they're really happy with it. Mm-hmm. And I've talked with others. I've talked with one person who was really happy with her medication for a while. And then I've talked with others who really didn't have a good experience. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
First off, saying if you're on medication right now,
Yeah.
do not stop it.
Right. Right. Yes.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
That the chemical reactions are happening in your body.
Follow your physician's advice.
Yes. Neither of us are doctors.
Yes.
We're not giving medical advice here.
Not
So
at all.
don't go off your medication. I did that at one point too, and I
Ooh.
ended up in the hospital in an
Scary.
extreme place. So I no longer medicate for the past 20 years.
Wow.
But that was a journey in and of itself as
Absolutely.
well. So don't go off your medications. But again, it's where we place our power. Because it is, no matter where you come from, there's not going to be a disagreement that this stuff is happening in your brain, that
Right.
you're producing or underproducing chemicals.
Mm-hmm.
That is a done conversation.
Yeah.
Now, you don't hear about it very often because in our society, we like synthetic things.
Yeah.
It's like, if you can take a pill to make me happy, give me a pill to make me happy.
Yeah.
If you can take a pill to make me sleep, it's like, let's just get it out of the way. But we have all of that power within ourselves.
Yeah.
We want something different. We can do that. So it's taking that power back. If you're medicating and you like it and it's great, then what you still have to do is, it's my choice to take that pill because I believe that pill is helping support me in my happiness.
Right.
Now, don't give the power the pill, or
Yeah.
pill the power.
Yeah.
Reverse. Take the power for yourself. This is my choice. I'm empowered. And this is what I'm going to do. Because if you ever decide to not take the medication with your doctor's advice and weaning off and everything, then you still have the power. I choose now that I know I can do this in my own mind, and I can produce, rather than synthetically, I'm going to produce these chemicals in my mind.
Absolutely. And this is really exciting for me. And for so many people, because this isn't an uncommon thing for people in my life. This is pretty, we talk about mental health, and there's a lot of people I know who are, reaching out to me, or maybe it just comes up in conversation that I'm depressed, I'm feeling depressed, I have depression, I'm experiencing depression. Anxiety is also super common as well. But it's exciting because there's something we can do about it. And I think for those people who are ready, and this is me trying to wrap up because we're already at 28 minutes. I don't know how that happened because there's so much to say, but there is something that we can do about it, because our mind is so much more powerful than we think it is. And I hesitate to say you are choosing depression yet, unless you are ready to go there, because it's really scary to start with that nugget. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So where would you suggest someone who's listening, who is saying, wow, this is exciting. Yes, I want control. Where do they start?
I would start with the belief and understanding that you're working perfectly. You are working perfectly.
You are already.
Yeah. Just your brain is so powerful and your body is following it, and that is amazing, and good job.
Right.
That's the first place to start. Now, if someone's like, good job, I hate the way I feel. Okay, but then understand you can change it. You can change it. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but feelings are also chemicals. That's all they are.
Feelings are things. Yeah.
They're just things. They're chemicals.
Yeah.
The reason you feel bad is because you're producing feel bad chemicals.
Right.
So what if you started producing in abundance feel good chemicals?
Mm-hmm. And how does one do that?
Well, it comes from our thoughts. Feelings, emotions, sensations are a byproduct of our thought life, of the memories we hold within. if someone is producing a lot of depressing thoughts, which are resulting in depressing chemicals being created in your brain, you're still working perfectly. Let's go back and find out, what are those thoughts? What is it that's going on in there? Let's reframe those things. Let's look back. A lot of us started building those building blocks when we were really young. Let's go back, and with no blame, no shame, no judgment, let's go back and find out, what are those thoughts supporting those depressing feelings? And let's address those. I'm not asking someone to positive think their way out of this.
Right.
I'm not. That's not possible, I don't think. I mean, you'd have to have, your scale would have to be really tipped toward the positive naturally to be able to do that. So that's not what I'm saying. We need to rewire your brain. This is a wiring issue,
Yes.
and let's rewire. We can. It's amazing that we can do that.
Yes.
Most people don't know we can do that. We can. It's called neuroplasticity. Your brain is not stuck. It can do whatever you want it to do. That's the empowerment. It's amazing.
Yes.
So this is not a deal breaker. You don't have depression. You're doing it, and you can do something different because you are a powerful, powerful being. And you're worth it, and it's already in you.
Yes.
If you can do depression, some of you out there are doing it so good.
Yeah.
What if you could do something different? So good.
Right.
I mean, it's amazing.
I have so many more things I want to ask you and so many more things I want to say, but I'm really jazzed as well. And if people have clicked off by now and they're just so not into it, or they're ready to write their comments, then by all means, feel free, just try to be polite in the comment section. But for those who are inspired and excited and they want to take this to the next step, we do want to say, check out their retreat in Maui. There's only 10 spots, and it's going to be major, intensive life emotional work, and you just got to get ready to dig in there, because you're going to leave a changed person, which is so exciting to have that space that you can offer that for someone. How long is the retreat?
It's 6 nights, 7 days.
Cool. And will it be plant-based?
Yes.
Okay, so Heather and Kent also eat plant-based. So for those of you vegan viewers out there, for someone who wants to work with someone, obviously, like, you're amazing and you've done such incredible work for so many people's lives, but you're kind of full on clients at the moment. But what if someone wants to work with someone to start changing their mind?
So the first thing I would say is get the book. It's not
Yes.
even just a sales pitch. It's like this, there's so much information in there, and it's really good. And it gets your mind started
Yes.
on understanding.
Yes.
Well, I go into a lot more of the research and everything into the book. Read the book, and it'll prime you. It might bother you in some ways, but, I think it'll prime you. And then if you're ready, there's also practical things in the book, because so it's like we were talking about, like, exercise, right? In the beginning, it feels like a daunting task to, like, go in and like do this stuff with your mind. But we take care of our bodies through exercise. We take care of the inside of our bodies through nutrition. We need to take care of our minds.
Yes.
It's actually the biggest piece.
Yeah.
So how do we do that? My biggest thing is to empower people to do this on their own. So, but you may need, let's say you've never lifted a weight before, or you've never done yoga before, you need an instructor in the beginning. Some people will need instructors in the beginning just for the first few times, maybe. Then you'll learn to do it yourself, and then you'll just be rocking and rolling. Like, it's easier and easier and easier once you understand your mind can change. But for those people who need a little bit of help, like, for instance, there are people with some really, really large traumas that maybe even in therapy they haven't been able to process through. That's kind of our specialty, or addictions or something like that. Then that you may need some help. Just email me on my site. I'll hook you up with, if we can't, help you at that point, well, I've got colleagues that can do it. We also do trainings for people to learn how to do this on their own and to be supported with a lot of other people. We have one coming up on Oahu. I'll give you the information in January, I believe. So there's lots of ways people can get help. But I really do feel like reading the book is kind of the first start. And I'm just finishing it on Audible too. So even people who can listen to it.
Yes.
I'd say that would be your first step.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on to my fake podcast. This has been truly a treat, because this is information I would not know how to package, and you've been able to explain it so easily with our friend Susie as our avatar, as our example.
Poor Susie.
Yeah. She's going to do great, though.
Susie's fine.
Yes.
She's doing amazing.
She went to the retreat.
Yes.
Anyway, so thank you so much, and make sure to connect with Heather if you're vibing her and you want to start changing your mind. Thanks.